Welcome to our training. We call this one From Learning to Earning. It's a multi-module training session, and I think you'll find a lot of good nuggets that you can immediately apply on your journey from the classroom to the boardroom. The first module is just to define our terms. If we're going to catapult you from the classroom into your own business, we need to better understand exactly what it is that we are talking about. So with that in mind, I'm David Zahn. I'm your teacher's business mentor. I have a lot of experience in making this very transition from the classroom to business. My experience includes being a teacher at IS 318 Eugenio de Hostas in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I've been an adjunct professor at the University of New Haven. I have closing in on 40 years of various corporate and consulting experiences in vast industries, from market research and technology all the way to heavy equipment construction, sales and rentals. I have consulted for consumer packaged goods companies. I have consulted for petroleum companies and pretty much everything in between. I've also coached those that wish to be entrepreneurs and helped them launch their businesses under various banners. Zahn Consulting, certainly this one, OK Now What, and a whole host of other times where I have worked with other independent consultants or larger consulting agencies. I've written a number of books: How to Succeed as an Independent Consultant, The Quintessential Guide to Using Consultants, and a couple of others. I've been a columnist for trade publications, training and development among them, general interest business. I was a columnist for the Hearst Publications. Number of newspapers in the Northeast region carried my weekly column called Getting Personal About Business. And I have done all kinds of radio interviews, guest articles, etc. But really, more important than me and my background, I'd like to better understand your interests. Included in your private portal that came as part of your registration for this course, I'd like you to download your vision form. And on that vision form, please answer for me: what are your objectives for taking this course? What is your ultimate career goal? How do you see this migration from teaching to business working for you? How do you hope I can help you in this training course? And then, because metrics, goals, objectives are very important, how will you determine the success of this course? What are the specific measures you're going to apply, or perhaps wish to have me share with you how others have measured success? What are your personal expectations of me? What is it that you are hoping I can provide for you to make this a success for you? Again, you have your access to your portal. Upload to me or type to me what it is that you see as the responses to those questions. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll share personal feedback on each of those in terms of how I see we can best work together to accomplish your goals. But I do want to stress, there is no free ride here. You're going to have to do a lot of work, and I'm going to join you and accompany you on that journey. But it's going to mean that you can't coast, you can't rely on others. But I do want to tell you, you have a friend. For those of you who have even the most cursory knowledge of Spanish, there's a word, friend, amigo, or amiga. I'm going to provide you a friend that sounds very similar to that. If you reach a point where you just are not understanding what it is that you're being asked to do, if you come to a point where you need help because you're at a crossroads, you're not certain which way to go, or the task just doesn't seem to fit what you were expecting or needing from this course, I'll ask you to go to our Facebook group, Business Launch, From Fear to Fabulous, and just post MEGO, MEGO, which stands for My Eyes Glazed Over. And I'll be sure to reach out to you and let you know how I can perhaps provide some assistance on that particular issue that you're wrestling with. Now, I mentioned this Facebook group, Business Launch, From Fear to Fabulous, and I want to emphasize one of the common mistakes that people who wish to be entrepreneurs and start their businesses will encounter is they tend to try to do this in isolation. I want to remind you that none of us are as smart as all of us. We need, and I emphasize the word need, to form a community. Please participate in that Facebook group. Share your questions, share your concerns, and especially share your successes. Let us know what progress you're making. If we come together as a community, we can support each other. We can provide insights from our own experiences because it's very likely what you are going to encounter, someone else has either encountered and succeeded, or perhaps could at least share the expectations, issues, obstacles, opportunities, whatever it may be that you'll be sharing together, so you have a partner in this endeavor. You're not doing this alone. It's important. Community is going to be the foundation that helps you to succeed. You cannot do this alone. Even though you are a solopreneur, you're going to need to rely on others who have gone down this path before or are accompanying you on this journey. Now, a few housekeeping rules as we move forward. The timing to complete this is up to you. I'm not going to force you to be at any particular point. It has to fit your schedule. Now, I will tell you, though, you must complete the course to get the full benefit. You can't just take one or two of these modules and expect to be a high flyer. It is going to build upon each skill as you go through the different modules. We're going to expand your capabilities and competencies. But don't feel that you have to take a module a day or a module a week. They are available for you. You can take them as they come available to you as you complete each of the prior modules. Rest assured, wherever you are in this journey, it's the right place. You're not going to compare yourself to what someone else is doing. This is not a competition. You're not trying to outdo the other people that are taking the course alongside of you and posting in the Facebook group. You are going to proceed at your speed, and it's going to be the right speed. I will tell you, though, help is always just an email away, and we can schedule the coaching sessions together so that I can address on a weekly basis any of the particular sticking points that you're having and continue the forward momentum. Now, we have to have a little bit of levity here. We're going to talk about leaving the classroom. We're going to talk about venturing into the world of coaching and consulting. And we must confront the fact that there are going to be certain jokes you either have heard or will hear, and you're going to need to embrace them and ultimately continue to overcome them and move forward. So let's start with teacher, something you're all very familiar with. What are some of the jokes you have heard about teachers? Feel free to add those to your portal communication to me. For instance, you probably have heard, and we're not agreeing with this, let's be clear, but you probably have heard those that can do, those that can't teach. And then some add, those that can't teach are phys ed instructors. And again, I'm not agreeing with this, I'm just sharing some of the jokes you may have heard. When we turn our attention to coaches and consultants, one of the jokes you may come across is a coach or a consultant is somebody who asks to borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. Obviously, there's a lot more to coaching and consulting than that seems to indicate, but that is going to be a feeling that some people will have. I don't need a coach, I don't need a consultant. I am perfectly fine doing what it is that I'm doing. And the reality is, we all can benefit from having an objective outsider providing us with their observations, perspectives, wisdom, experience, etc. So let's talk about what some of the industries are that influence people who need this kind of help. And let's face it, we all could use this kind of help. So, define the following on your definitions form that again is in the portal. What is a teacher? What is a coach? What is a consultant? What is a mentor? What is a manager? And what is a leader? Take out your definitions form and provide your perspective on that. I'm going to give you some of what I found, and I'm going to tell you up front, it is not all that helpful. So, for instance, a teacher. This is really not much help at all. One who teaches. Well, I don't really know what that means. How would I recognize it? I mean, we have an intuitive sense, but what does that really look like? Well, some of the qualities that a good teacher has are listed there. They have to be good communicators. They have to be able to listen, listening for what is said and listening for what is not said, if you will, so that they can get a better picture of the student's comprehension, understanding, skill set, etc. They have to be collaborative with the student, collaborative with the parents, collaborative with their co-teachers, collaborative with the administration, and on and on. That's obviously a really important skill and one that will serve you well as you migrate from teaching to your entrepreneurial career. This next one obviously has been called to our attention in the last couple of years, and that is adaptability. You have to be able to respond to the situation as it presents itself. And that has certainly never been called into our focus more so than in this latest COVID crisis that we've undergone. You have to be empathetic. Not every student learns the same way. Not every student will confront the same challenges. That's going to also come into play when we talk about your business or personal coaching and consulting. You need to understand where the person or company that you're working with is starting from, where they want to go, and what they're willing to do to get there. And clearly they need to have patience. If you're going to succeed in this business, you have to have patience. There are other characteristics, though, that I want to bring to light. You have to have a certain gravitas, a certain presence, so that you can command attention. It's going to be even more heightened in our current industry environment where you need to do this remotely through Zoom or Teams or other video kinds of sharing, electronic means of communication. You have to be able to apply to the real world events that your client, your coaching person that you're working with, the company that you're engaged with, they have to see it not as textbook, not as academic, but how can I apply? What does this mean for me? Again, a skill that most of us are easily able to use in taking the complex and making it simple. You have to be able to use best practices. You have to connect with your client. You have to be able to communicate the complex in a way that is adapted to that particular client. And obviously, you're going to have to always be on the journey to your own learning. What worked then may not work now. What tools and resources you applied to a situation previously may no longer be effective. These are all skills as teachers you have used and used to your betterment. Okay, so a coach. What exactly is a coach? Well, a coach is one who helps unlock a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. There is a slight refinement to what we saw with teaching. Teaching is often focused on communicating what needs to be learned, what needs to be done, according to some objective source. You can be an excellent teacher, but it's still incumbent upon the student to absorb what it is that you're attempting to teach. A coach has to reverse that a little bit and start with the student. In our teaching example, it would be a student, it would be a client in the coaching example. What does the client, the one being coached, want to achieve? And then the coach's role is to help them get there. The teacher's role was to ensure that the student captures, integrates the learning that the teacher is there to provide. So a little different focus here. Coach refers to putting yourself at service of the client. In our teaching example, it's more the student is expected through the efforts of the teacher to acquire knowledge or skills that have been predetermined. So now we look at consulting. Consulting is the act of providing counsel or advice. Okay, the sharing of expertise, the exchange of experience, expertise, intellect, process, or information for a fee in a professional relationship. Well, let's talk about this because there's a few words there that we're going to have to just assume are commonly understood. Expertise. Who defines expertise? I will share with you my perspective is that it often is going to be based on the client. Now, sure, there are certain certifications or licensures that seem to denote expertise. A certified public accountant, a CPA, has to pass a test. An attorney, a physician, they have to pass a certain test, and they very often, if you go into their offices, you will see a diploma hanging on the wall, and you'll see leather-bound books behind them that seem to designate this person has done some very arcane study into the field in which they represent. But for coaches and consultants, that's a wide open field. There are organizations that will certify coaches and consultants in their methodologies, but you can be a coach. You can claim to be a consultant without any of those certifications. And as long as a client is willing to engage with you, you can call yourself a coach or a consultant very easily. The bar to entry is very, very low. There were other things that were listed in that particular definition, though. It is someone who does something for a fee. So you're not just volunteering, you're not just over tea or a beer sharing your perspectives with someone like a friend would, but it's charging for your services. And then there was the word professional. Well, a professional is very simply somebody who gets paid. It really doesn't, although we tend to think it does, it doesn't mean that they have a certain standard of performance. A professional is one who gets paid. That is the sole delineation of a professional. So, coach, consultant get paid for what they do. They have to demonstrate certain expertise as defined by their client, oftentimes, and they have to charge the fee so they can be called a professional. Moving on. So, is it fair to say the first coach or consultant was the snake in the Garden of Eden? Now, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. There was no fee paid, and I'm not certain that any of us would consider that to be an appropriate coach or consultant icon. But there was advice being given, poor advice, but advice being given that others followed, and had there been an exchange, a barter, a payment, then that could have been considered a coaching or consulting relationship. So then, what is a mentor exactly? A mentor is simply a trusted counselor or guide. Doesn't say they have to be paid, doesn't reference that they have undergone any kind of certification or have any specific experience, expertise. It's somebody who counsels or guides. So then, what is a manager? A manager is someone who is traditionally very operationally focused, very tactically measured. What are the tasks to be completed? Did we complete them? Do they meet a particular standard? Are they of a certain level, quality? That's generally what a manager is responsible for. How does that differ from a leader? A leader is a person who, again, generally has a more strategic or vision bend to what it is that they do. They very often have a formal authority, although there are times when they can have an informal influencing authority, and they are a leader, although they may not be very high up in a particular organizational chain or within a familial dynamic. The leader is someone who is influencing others to achieve a particular outcome or goal. They tend to be somewhat strategic versus tactical, although they can shift back and forth between being management focused or leadership focused. So, let's review again a little bit in greater detail the differences between what a coach and a consultant does and what some people think a coach or consultant is responsible for. So, coach consultant is an expert, and will use the most broad definition of expert because, let's face it, expert is defined by the client in most instances, not by us. So it's an expert called upon to offer, again, there's that word, professional advice. And I call out to you, expert, professional. They are hired, there's that fee, payment, barter, hired to offer service based on a perceived competence. Unlike an employee, which has a defined, the coach consultant typically has a defined start and end time to their employment. An employee generally is hired until certain circumstances determine it's no longer appropriate. Either they leave, they retire, in certain instances they may get terminated. But a coach consultant generally is for a prescribed or defined period of time with a start and stop identified. It may be by date, it may be by length of a project. When the project ends, which could be in a month or a year or a decade, then that relationship ends. A coach consultant is not responsible for the client's results or mistakes. Coach consultant provides the counsel, the advice, the resources, but it's up to the client to correctly apply those particular resources or tools. And unless we're in a very specific kind of coaching or consulting, they're not a mental health professional. They're there to focus on the issue or issues, plural, that the client wishes to address, but they should not become their therapist. Again, I'm differentiating. There are certain coach consultants where that is their role. But if that's not your specific defined role, you need to prevent that from occurring. And you shouldn't be hired to take the blame for some outcome because you're not responsible for the mistakes of the client. So, I want to, as we conclude this module, I want to remind you, complete the vision form, send it my way. If you do have any of the jokes that you have come across about teaching or coaching, consulting, feel free to share them either with me or in that Facebook group, Business Launch From Fear to Fabulous. Complete the discovery forms, and remember, we'll talk to you about the next skill in our next module. I'm going to keep it under my hat until you click on that one, and I look forward to seeing you then and there. Thank you for your attention on this module, and we'll get together real soon.